I'm Sergeant Miranda from the 324th Intelligence Squadron. Welcome to the QuickAF mini-series video for overseas emergency leave. As a frontline supervisor, I felt least prepared for this situation and would have preferred to not have to learn through experience. To help you, we've put together a guide to navigate the logistical burdens of overseas emergency leave so you can better support your airmen and their family during a traumatic, stressful time. By tuning in, you're already doing a great job as a supervisor. Thank you. We're going to give you the bottom line on the unique factors of emergency leave, to include the first steps to take when a situation comes up, how to get the Red Cross notification, to submit the formal emergency leave and book travel, suggestions on how to take care of your airmen during this time, and what to do after travel. The specifics of emergency leave. It allows an airman leave in the event the member or their spouse's immediate family is terminally ill, has a life-threatening condition, illness, or major surgery, is admitted to intensive care considered in critical condition, has a verified death, natural disaster, or if the family would suffer unusual hardship from failure to return home. If you just look at this portion of the definition of emergency leave, there's a lot of things that are open for interpretation and huge misconceptions. We're going to break that down in the next few slides. The first one is the definition of immediate family. That is for the member or their spouses, parents, to include step-parents, children, brothers and sisters, their sole surviving blood relative, or an in loco parentis person. In order to meet the criteria for in loco parentis, two conditions must be met. The first is that the individual has to have taken place of the member's parent for at least 5 years before they turned 21 or entered military service, and they had to have provided for the person with most basic needs and moral guidance. This is a common conversation when it comes to grandparents or similar strong family members. It's a challenging criteria to meet if you look directly at the AFI definition. However, if the airman feels the situation meets the above criteria, the first sergeant team is going to have them sign a memorandum for record stating so. If it turns out that the situation doesn't meet the criteria, that's okay. The member can still take regular leave. It's just a different path in order to get it approved. Their travel is not covered by the Red Cross. However, they're very likely to have swift assistance from the first sergeant team and their chain of command. A common misconception is that emergency leave is free leave. However, emergency leave does charge against the member's leave balance. Another difference between regular leave and emergency leave is that emergency leave must be approved by the squadron commander or the first sergeant and cannot be delegated any lower. While overseas, the Red Cross provides a huge benefit for members and their families, meaning that they'll provide travel allowances in the form of round-trip plane tickets for the individual and any family members that return home with them. But emergency leave situation comes up for you. There's two super important first steps for you to take. The first is to check on your airmen, and be sure to keep in mind that rank could be a barrier for them to be open and honest with you. Make sure they know that you genuinely care. The first question I always ask is, are you in a safe location right now? This news could hit anywhere. They could be in the grocery store or on the side of the H1. And you really want to make sure that they are safe and are not going to get themselves injured while they're processing this news. The next thing I ask and usually strongly encourage is, can I meet you somewhere and where can I meet you? This is to help in person with some of the logistical burden that they're about to have to go through and that we're going to walk you through. It's a lot easier if you have someone who's of sound mind who can answer questions if you are hit with waves of grief. It's my preferential way, but I always respect the members' wants, needs, and privacy. The last thing I make sure is that they immediately have the phone number for the chaplain, the ART, mental health, and the first sergeant. This is super important because they may not have processed it in the time that you talk to them, and that could change very swiftly, and you want to make sure that they have that contact to get through sooner rather than later. The next thing I do is extremely important as well, both for me as an individual helping through the situation and for our airmen who needs to get through this process swiftly so that they can get home. I call usually the flight chief or flight commander and notify them we have an e-leave situation and give them the bottom line of where everything is. I also either use that person or call another senior NCO or trusted NCO who's good at these situations. The reason is that it's easier to tag team if you have two people with the member. One can help with some of the logistical stuff, coordinating with the agencies to get the Red Cross notification through, and the other person can make sure that the airmen and or their family are doing okay and can be there for those human needs. It's super important that the flight leadership is aware so they can notify the first sergeant team. This does not count as a formal emergency leave notification for the member to go home and for the process to start, but it really does help speed up the administrative tasks that are required later. The Red Cross notification is the first step in this process and must happen as soon as possible. The recommendation is that a family member who's in close proximity to where the situation is happening calls the Red Cross directly because they'll have the most information. However, there's not always someone who's in a good headspace to be able to deal with that. There's also an online Red Cross website that has a self-service tool that allows you to enter that information digitally. This is a great place for a supervisor to help. The information that's required from it is significant. It's going to ask a lot of details both about the service member themselves and also about the emergency. They're also going to want names, points of contacts, areas for anything involved within the emergency. So if the emergency room was involved, they're going to want that provider, also a primary care provider, anyone from the hospital care team. They're going to want funeral homes, police officers investigating, or even a contact from the morgue. It could be very upsetting for your airmen. I strongly recommend kind of getting in front of it and taking a look at those questions and seeing if you can get any of the information that can help this process without being invasive and making the situation harder. The Red Cross website's self-service tool is an awesome opportunity for you to relieve a logistical burden from your airmen. You can take a look at the questions they might ask by going there before an emergency ever occurs. We provided the link in the checklist for you guys to access easily. One thing, once this Red Cross notification is completely done, be sure the chain of command is notified, both flight and first sergeant team. There may be some lag from the Red Cross calling the first sergeant, but them knowing can help pregame when it comes to the leave process. The next step is for the member's leave to be submitted and approved. There's two ways to go about this. The first is using LeaveWeb and using the emergency leave option on the drop-down menu when submitting a leave request, where you'd normally put ordinary leave. The second way is using the Air Force Form 988 that's completed with the First Sergeant's office. Regardless of the submission method, there's two things that matter here. One is that the emergency notification from the Red Cross has to be finalized to finalize this piece of paperwork. Second, this has to be approved by the unit commander or First Sergeant. It cannot be delegated any lower. Again, this is why and where it's super important to have effective communication up and down the chain, because this piece of paperwork is what holds the member from being able to book their travel and get off island as quickly as possible. While the leave form is being routed for approval, contact the Squadron Resource Advisor. You'd like to make sure that the airman has a Defense Travel System account and that their government travel card is active. Once that leave is approved, you can take the leave form to the Travel Management Office to book travel. Make sure that your airman keeps a copy of all of these hard copy paperworks they're going to get. It doesn't matter if it's messily shoved in a folder, they're just going to need all of it when they return to do their travel voucher. Let's talk about the reason that you're actually here, and that's taking care of your airmen. Keep in mind that everyone grieves differently. Your airman could be anywhere on a scale, starting with I am distraught and could use your help with every step, to I'm extremely private and can handle myself. Keep in mind it's about them and helping them grieve and handle the process, and not about you and what you would like. There's a few different ways that you can take care of your airmen before they ever step on their first flight. The first is helping with the administrative process that we listed in the previous slides. The next is checking in on their family if the airman gives you permission and would like for you to do so. The next is making sure that their home and work tasks are covered while they're gone so that they can just really focus on that leave. And then the last is making sure they have access to resources both on island before leave and during the leave period. While the airman's on leave, you can also pass around a sympathy card. I strongly recommend that you keep the audience small on it in order to protect the privacy of your airmen. I usually just have the people who already know about the emergency leave event because they were involved in the approval process write a little note to make sure the airman knows that they're cared about. Once they return from leave, make sure they don't push themselves too hard. Help them transition back in, check in on them fairly often to make sure that the pace of things that they've picked up kind of aligns with what they can give at that time. There's two things that are important to take care of post-travel. The first is to make sure the member officially returns from leave and that their leave balance reflects the time that they were off island. The second is to submit their travel voucher and make sure that that's done fairly quickly, that their GPC has been reimbursed the amount of money from the travel voucher so the airman is not either in trouble or impacted financially by the event. In this QuickAF video on emergency leave, we've discussed the first steps to take when your airman needs to go on emergency leave, how to breeze through the Red Cross notification, leave, and travel booking process, the best ways to take care of your airman from a holistic person aspect, and how to take care of your airman post-travel. In order to make this process easier on everyone, we made a checklist for you. It includes each step of the administrative process, as well as points of contact, phone number, email addresses, or websites to visit. It also has the Air Force instruction and joint travel regulations that guide emergency leave, and a few optional questions you can ask to better help your airmen if needed. The checklist can be found on the First Sergeant section of the Squadron SharePoint, or by contacting the First Sergeant's office directly.